It's no secret that social media has made major leaps and bounds over the last 3 decades. From AOL instant messengers and random forum threads about shows that had just premiered on the television in the late 90s to the modern marvels like Discord and Instagram. We've come a long way in our resources to communicate without being in a physical space with our respondent. We no longer need things like mail, letters. However, joy isn't as simple as easy communication. With the progress we've made in social media, we've unleashed a kind of monster from Pandora's box. A multitude of rising issues and problems, each with their own diagnoses and threats. The New York Department of the Health Matters organization reported that on May 12th of 2023, over 50% of babies aged under 4 had been given access to some kind of digital device like a phone or a tablet. The Social Media Victims Center reported on December 6th of last year that 97% of American teenagers use social media daily. They further noted that in 50% of these cases, the teenager in question self-diagnosed their usage as constant. This is something that's irrevocably changed the world, and it's no longer a mission to purge the problem, but rather to live with the consequences of the beast that we've unleashed. I know it sounds like I'm talking about some big monster that's raised cities and can breathe fire and cause all these kinds of problems for the world, and it's hyperbolic in the kind of most cinematic of ways, the way I'm describing it, but that's not for no reason. The CDC posted a graph on August 4th of 2017 that showed a rise in nearly 40% in suicide rates in teenagers from the years 2004 to 2015. The most notable time of the rapidly expanding influence of social media and the internet. It's not a concrete connection. We can't look at every life lost to depression or hopelessness and claim some unseen boogeyman did it, but the rise isn't there for nothing. The internet's darling, Mayo Clinic, claimed on January 18th of 2024 that chronic social media attachment, or what was described as using social media for more than 3 hours a day, had a high correlation with low self-esteem, high anxiety, depressive symptoms, insomnia, and other risks not immediately diagnosable. This, obviously, has plagued our teens for the foreseeable last decade. However, the discussion further extends to something that we should regard for the future. Generation Alpha. We all knew that they were going to come up in the discussion of the internet and the question of development and how the internet has affected us. However, it's something that definitely needs to be discussed in its full depth. Generation Alpha is described most recently by Encyclopedia Britannica as the generation of people born or who will be born between 2010 and 2025. Of course, these numbers are still being debated as generation lines properly settle, too recent to tell. However, Generation Alpha is the first generation to be born into a society functioning off of the back of the internet. This has led to obvious concerns, considering what we've postulated so far about the internet as a main source of communication, and statistics regarding them as they're aging are already in tow. However, these little hooligans have only had half a picture painted of the whole. October 22nd of last year, the Annie E. Casey Foundation wrote an article regarding some of the frightening realities of Generation Alpha. To run some numbers, around 36 million children aged newborn to 11 have been given access to the internet. This exceeds the next age group, ages 12 to 17, by a whopping 11.6 million. As of the statistics gathered, 65% of the generation spend 4 or more hours a day on various social media platforms. Approximately 44% of that being reported users of TikTok. Now, I'm not going to sidetrack. However, there is a multitude of alleged threats and controversies surrounding the platform that have little effect in the grand narrative of the internet's effect on development. Whatever issues the government has with TikTok have yet to affect the users in a way that would be meaningful to the discussion moving forward, so we're just going to keep them out of the discussion. Of note, In the 44%, however, there is a staggering 5% deficit between the usage of TikTok in Generation Alpha and access to conventional television. 44% use TikTok, 39% know what a TV is. Alpha has obviously had some major hurdles that have been faced by Gen Z as well. However, these hurdles have easily multiplied in grandeur in the scant time between Gen Z and Gen Alpha's formative years. One of the problems we can source from the Child Mind Institute, who on November 18th of 2024 found a correspondence between one's social media usage and the kind of detrimental perfectionist mindset that we see in Gen Z. To a greater extent, Gen Alpha has come upon a kind of growing disconnect between their real lives and their internet lives, where only the best is often shared in a bid to kind of seem to have a perfect life, to bid that they are the best, that they have the most to share, and they're deserving of the praise and likes and accolades of their peers. This perfectionist mindset is one of the many things that has been developed in the internet age, not only in Generation Alpha, but as we've seen in Generation Z. It only exacerbates the problems that we've discussed already: the anxiety, the insomnia, the depression, and this all coalesces into a new point. Generation Alpha hasn't even reached their teen years properly. One of the most well-known talking points regarding Gen Alpha is the question of their illiteracy. There's still heavy debate and discussion as to the proper rate of illiteracy in Generation Alpha, whether it is a product of the internet, whether it's a product of failing schooling education. There is a multitude of things that you might be able to point fingers towards. However, the data shows, as reported by the Kickapoo High Quarterly, there's around 40% of Generation Alpha that are reading under their grade level. Not quite illiteracy, however, that is a staggering number for them to be behind on. A bigger source, the Toronto Star, reported on November 24th of 2023 that these illiteracy rates are in response to something that we can all agree set us back many years: the COVID-19 pandemic. As we've discussed, the formative years of childhood and teenagehood are well and important to the functioning of the well-being of oneself. However, the sucker punch given to everyone in early 2020 left us scrambling to pick up the pieces and keep things running as normal. At the forefront of the scatter for normalcy was the internet and social media. Children communicated through posts and video calls in Zoom, lacking the ability to meet physically or adjust to friendships and make meaningful physical connection with people rather than an image or a video. Learning was stunted as students stared at a screen that blankly told them things that they were hardly prepared to understand or hold within their depth. It was put upon parents to give kids the fundamental tools to help them adjust to the world when the pandemic was all over. However, parents were also sideswiped by this. They were given the stress of job security. They were given the stress of figuring out how to manage their time, how to take care of their child that was meant to be in school at these times, at these hours. And they were also sideswiped with the responsibility of teaching their kid when they often didn't have the time to. That's why in the years of the pandemic, we saw electronics take over this nanny position that began to raise children. The reason we call it an iPad baby generation is because this is a generation that has built up their own lingo and slang and has built themselves upon the back of the internet. So, after everything is said and done, what is the point of all of this data, all of this information? It's hypocritical to make the claim that social media is all bad, that the internet is some demon meant to be held in a box and used only for the useful parts. This thesis wouldn't be possible without a multitude of backing information provided via social media platforms. Running quickly back to one of our sources, the Toronto Star, Generation Alpha and Gen Z, still in school, were faced with a reported 13% increase in illiteracy rates now compared to 2013. Aside from the influence of the internet, lacking educational funding and a growing divide in social equity and the security of schools in America and other countries and the all-subsuming multiple-year stint that was the pandemic, there's a huge collection of reasons that children would be lacking in their development and require more help than their forefathers. Social media has had a hugely beneficial impact on humanity when it's consumed in moderation. Only using social media to contact friends or partake in interests, using Google to find out why your rash hasn't gone away, or even figuring out some of the words I've used in this discussion mean. The way we've learned to depend on the all-subsuming, ever-changing entity is awful, but it's how things have unraveled as it's grown. It was Internet's made star Robert Burnham that put it so succinctly. You know, the choice all of us have at the end of the day, it's not just kids. You have a choice in your bed at night between all of the information in the history of the world or the back of your eyelids. And that's a crazy, crazy binary to choose every night.